October 30th, 2025. Laredo, South Texas. U.S. intelligence intercepted a secret exchange between the leaders of the Lone Star Cartel in Texas and Los Diablos del Norte in Mexico. One shipment, 4.5 tons of methamphetamine, valued at $280 million, enough to poison 18 million people, nearly the population of Florida. Tonight, the smugglers changed the rules. No trucks, no ships. This shipment would travel by air. A Piper PA-28 Cherokee, disguised as a humanitarian aircraft, was preparing for takeoff. Destination, near San Diego, where the Lone Star Cartel was waiting. Estimated landing time, about 2 hours. The United States did not hesitate. Operation Iron Tide was activated. An FA-18 launched from the USS Gerald R. Ford, armed with 4 AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles, soared into the night sky. Above, 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters carried 15 Navy SEALs. Below, 3 RHIB assault craft carried 40 fully armed U.S. Marines. Could America intercept this shipment before it reached the rendezvous point? Or would it slip through and penetrate U.S. soil? I'll tell you the truth. October 30th, 2025. 3 a.m., Laredo, South Texas. For months, the border city of Laredo looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Beneath its quiet streets, the FBI and U.S. naval intelligence had built an invisible web of surveillance. 84 hidden cameras, 57 audio sensors, and 12 satellite relay stations stretching from the Rio Grande to the town's outskirts. Agents lay in wait, their presence disguised as everyday life. But behind that stillness, a storm was gathering. The result was a digital ring around two cartels, the Lone Star Cartel in Texas and Los Diablos del Norte in Mexico. They watched every handshake, every counted dollar, midnight messages, and 3-minute calls from long freight truck parking lots. Over 3 weeks, analysts logged 312 hours of footage, intercepted 247 calls, and tracked 19 money transfers through shell companies totaling $43,250,000. What the FBI and naval investigators uncovered in a single whispered hour from a hidden microphone was chilling. A midnight phone call between two cartel bosses. It revealed a shipment, 4.5 tons of methamphetamine, valued at $280 million. That quantity of meth, enough to poison 18 million people, almost the population of Florida, was about to cross the sky. What shocked investigators most was the method of transport. Not by truck, not by sea, but by cargo plane. A Piper PA-28 Cherokee, registered to a fake humanitarian organization, is scheduled to land near San Diego within 12 hours, where the Lone Star Cartel is preparing. In a shadowy hangar just across the border, cartel operatives were loading sacks of drugs onto the aircraft in under 7 minutes, protected by 5 armed men carrying AK-103 rifles. From the command post, they tracked every move. Thermal images, GPS pings, the soft whispers from the night sky. The evidence was indisputable. Somewhere between Reynosa and Laredo, a plane was about to turn the border air into a battlefield. And as dawn approached, one thought echoed across every screen. If that plane lands, 18 million lives could vanish into smoke. By 4:43 a.m., over the Gulf of Mexico, the sky was pitch black, the wind howling in sharp gusts. Below, the waves crashed against each other like whispers of what was about to unfold. Above them, flying low and silent, a Piper PA-28 carried a payload no commercial aircraft was ever allowed to bear. 4.5 tons of nearly pure methamphetamine sealed inside black canvas sacks to conceal its deadly cargo. Inside were 5 armed men, enforcers of the Los Diablos del Norte cartel. Their weapons gleamed through the narrow cabin windows. AK-103 assault rifles ready to kill if intercepted. They have 2 hours to approach and touch down at the agreed location. The aircraft was registered under Relief Med Aid Group, a fraudulent humanitarian NGO. Its flight documents, forged but flawless. To the naked eye, it appeared to be a relief mission. In reality, it was a chemical weapon in the sky. At 4:50 a.m., 80 nautical miles south of Texas. From the deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford, operators observed a thin green line moving slowly across the radar. The Piper's flight path. Inside the Laredo Command Center, analysts shouted coordinates. The order was given. A single FA-18 roared into the darkness. Armed with 4 AM-120 AMRAAM missiles, its mission was clear: intercept and neutralize. This was not an arrest. It was a battlefield at 9,100 meters. Inside the cockpit, the pilot's radar display flickered with dots. The target was locked. The smugglers had disabled the transponder and dropped altitude below radar coverage, skimming just above the water. But it didn't matter. The FA-18's AN/A-PG-81 AESA radar cut through the veil. At 4:55 a.m., with authorization from the Joint Task Force Command, the order came through. Weapons free. 2 AIM-120D AMRAAM missiles were launched at Mach 4.1, closing distance in seconds. The first tore through the Piper's wing, detonating 50 meters away. A compressed air shock wave of 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit, 680 degrees Celsius. The second struck its mark. The explosion scattered debris across 2 square miles of ocean. All 5 armed couriers were killed instantly. In less than 9 minutes, $280 million worth of crystal meth had been reduced to vapor, chemicals, and flame, sinking into the depths of the sea. The sailors on the flight deck watched the blast reflect off the surface of the water. Lightning without thunder. The radar screen went dark. Target lost. Mission complete. But the silence did not last. At 5:10 a.m., encrypted frequencies surged again. Intercepted intelligence revealed a second transaction planned 5 days later, involving another 3 tons of narcotics and a fortified base south of Laredo. Less than 4 minutes later, surveillance intelligence from unmanned aircraft transmitted a new coded signal. Another transfer scheduled at a remote compound deep inside Mexico in 5 days. The network was not dismantled. It had merely been warned. For the Navy, the skies were silent again. But silence, they knew, was just the breath between battles. Can America's strike truly destroy the heart of this empire, or did it only cut off one head of a serpent that's already growing back? 6:21 a.m. The victory in the sky lasted only a few minutes before intelligence confirmed the truth. The pipeline was still operational. Satellite data revealed the coordinates of a cartel fortress buried deep in the scrublands of the Tamaulipas Desert, a facility producing 3 tons of methamphetamine worth over $180 million, enough to poison 12 million people. Surveillance from a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone showed 4 main buildings, 2 underground bunkers, and a 2.4-meter wall lined with motion sensors and floodlights powered by stolen generators. Around the perimeter, 27 armed guards rotated patrols every 20 minutes. This was no hideout. It was an industrial battlefield. So the United States didn't wait. A joint special task force was mobilized in silence. 6:31 a.m. 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters lifted off from the USS Gerald R. Ford, their blades slicing through the air at 160 knots. Each helicopter carried 15 Navy SEALs, equipped with M4A1 rifles, M320 launchers, and helmet-mounted cameras streaming live to Laredo Command. Below, 3 RHIB assault boats sped upstream along the Rio Grande at 45 knots, carrying 40 U.S. Marines armed with M249 machine guns, Mk-46 turrets, and night vision optics. The assault force carried more than 7,000 rounds of ammunition, enough to hold an entire town if necessary. Their mission: breach, clear, and eliminate. 6:46 a.m. Thermal drones confirmed 27 cartel gunmen, each position triangulated. At the center of the compound, a convoy of trucks was parked beside 50 steel drums, each containing 60 gallons of liquid meth oil, roughly 18,000 pounds of raw chemical precursors. At 6:49 a.m., a single word came over the comms: execute. Flashbangs tore through the darkness. Smoke grenades turned sand into fog. From above, SEALs fast-roped onto rooftops while Marines breached the front gate in 22 seconds, cutting through reinforced steel with thermite explosives. The first firefight erupted, 1,200 rounds in under 2 minutes. The compound descended into chaos. Cartel gunmen scattered, firing AK-103s and FN Minimes. A heavy DSHK 12.7mm machine gun mounted on a pickup shredded the wall before being silenced by an M230 30mm cannon from the hovering Seahawk above at 100 feet. Then came the explosions. A stray bullet pierced a chemical drum, igniting 1.2 tons of crystal meth in a roaring orange blaze. 7:08 a.m. Resistance collapsed. 14 cartel gunmen were killed, 23 wounded, 11 captured alive. U.S. forces reported 3 injuries, no fatalities. In total, 1.2 tons of meth, $43 million in cash, 6 encrypted ledgers, and 11 laptops were seized. Analysts later traced $126 million laundered abroad through shell accounts in Panama and Curacao. When the final flames died out, the entire compound smoldered across 5 acres of ruins. From above, it looked like a neighborhood erased from the earth. A cartel stronghold had fallen, but the numbers spoke of something darker. $180 million destroyed tonight, yet billions more still moving. The border war was no longer measured in bullets. It was measured in tons, dollars, and lives. They thought the battle was over, but inside those burning vaults hid something far more dangerous than drugs. Don't blink. The next discovery will shock you. Hurry. 8:28 a.m. The gunfire had stopped, but the smoke still clung to the compound like a ghost. Blood streaked the concrete floors. Spent shell casings littered the loading bay. The air stank of cordite, diesel, and something deeper. The rot of empire undone. Teams moved quickly. Medical units treated the wounded. Detainees were zip-tied, processed, and flown out by chopper. But it was what the raid left behind that made agents pause. Inside a hidden vault, protected by biometric locks and steel-reinforced doors, lay a trove of evidence more devastating than the meth. 5 bank-grade hard drives, water-sealed 9 burner phones, still pinging off international towers, and a folder of documents stamped with names from Panama, Belize, and Texas. The drives, decrypted within hours, revealed the scale. This compound wasn't an outpost, it was a command center. Over 700 wire transfers traced to shell corporations' accounts totaling $116 million moved monthly. Supply chains stretching from Guatemala to Dallas, with scheduled flights, drivers on payroll, and warehouses disguised as agricultural exporters. The most chilling document? A distribution forecast predicting that by March 2026, the Lone Star Diablos Alliance could flood the U.S. with 16 tons of meth per quarter, enough for 70 million individual doses every 90 days. Elsewhere in the compound, another discovery added weight to the horror. A locked room, no larger than a garage, lined with chemical burns on the floor. Inside were 3 men, severely injured. Prisoners, not employees. Their skin was burned, their hands deformed from handling precursor chemicals without gloves. They'd been forced to process meth for $10 a week, fed once a day, chained at night. One of them whispered through broken teeth, "We were promised jobs. Then they took our names." By 9:15 a.m., extraction was complete. At 9:17, with satellite confirmation, 5 GBU-53/B Stormbreaker bombs were launched from a B-2 Spirit circling offshore. The compound vanished in seconds. A $100 million hub erased in flame and dust. But the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was proof. Proof that the war had changed shape. The cartels were no longer hiding in jungles. They were operating like corporations, with balance sheets, HR departments, and death quotas, and America had just burned down their boardroom. 10:04 a.m. From the deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford, the smoke on the horizon had faded, but no one celebrated. Victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like awareness. The battlefield was quiet now, not because the war was over, but because the enemy had moved. Inside a sealed operations room, analysts reviewed the aftermath. The numbers were staggering. Over 6.9 tons of methamphetamine intercepted across 2 strikes, $323 million in raw narcotics destroyed, $43 million in cash, seized 37 cartel members neutralized, including 3 high-ranking logistics officers. And perhaps most importantly, the severance of a corridor stretching from Central America to the U.S. heartland. But behind the numbers were truths far more disturbing. The war on drugs had changed. The cartels no longer acted like gangs. They moved like multinationals. Private aircraft, offshore accounts, legal counsel, public relations fronts, their labs were cleaner than hospitals, their smuggling operations more efficient than some shipping companies. They weren't just trafficking poison, they were running an industrial syndicate. More than that, they understood American systems, how to exploit aviation loopholes, how to fake humanitarian aid, how to bury wire transfers beneath layers of digital camouflage. They didn't fear raids, they expected delays. But this time, they were wrong. Operation Iron Tide had exposed a new front, not in the streets, not in the ports, but in the airspace, inboxes, and boardrooms where cartel ambition now lives. And while 70 soldiers and 4 missiles stopped one shipment, the true weapon had been vigilance. Because in this war, the enemy no longer wears tattoos and bandanas. They wear suits, carry laptops, and trade silence for billions. For those who stood against them, sailors, agents, analysts, the cost was time, scars, and sleep lost forever. But the result was undeniable. One empire ended, and the sea remembered. As the sun rose over the Gulf of Mexico on October 30th, 2025, the waters looked calm again. But beneath that surface, the truth drifted. In fragments of steel, traces of fire, and silence too heavy to ignore. The war had taken lives. It had burned empires. And yet, the waves rolled on. For the FBI, the Navy, and every unit that had stepped into the shadows, this operation would never be just about drugs. It was about drawing a line, not on a map, but in history. A message written not with ink, but with flame. You do not get to poison a nation and vanish. The world now knows what Laredo taught us. That a cartel today is not a gang. It is a network. It has financiers, engineers, lawyers, and politicians. It launders billions through fake aid groups, hides bombs in relief flights, and builds fortresses behind charity logos. It's not hiding in the jungle, it's flying through our skies. And so the mission continues. Not in firefights always, but in keystrokes, in midnight phone taps, in long, quiet hours in field offices and forward decks, where men and women in uniform prepare for what comes next. Because for every plane shot down, another is being fueled. For every base destroyed, another rises in concrete and code. And the only defense left is vigilance. So remember the names, remember the dates, not for fear, but for clarity. Operation Iron Tide wasn't just a mission, it was a mirror. It showed us who they are, and who we have to be. Because in the end, the ocean doesn't forget. It only waits. If you believe America's strength must never be silenced, then show your support. Like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel, because only together can we keep these untold stories alive.